Hi, this is Shannon Seaver, and we're looking at Part 2 of Section 3.5 of our text. We're looking at variations of conditional statements. So our agenda for today is to write contrapositive for a conditional statement and to write the converse and inverse of a conditional statement. So, first thing I need to let you know is that conditional statements are equivalent, and remember this is our symbol for equivalence, is the 3 dashed line there that looks like kind of like an equal sign with an extra dash, is that conditional statements are equivalent to contrapositive statements. So you need this definition. A contrapositive statement is a conditional statement in which the antecedent, that's the first part, and the consequent are reversed, and both are negated. So I have an example here. If you live in Los Angeles, then you live in California. So if I'm going to, first of all, flip this part, that's the first statement, you live in Los Angeles, and you live in California, that means that the you live in California part will be first, and the you live in Los Angeles will be second. And we need to negate both of those. So it should look like this. If you don't live in California, then you don't live in Los Angeles. So these two statements are equivalent to each other. They just sound different. Let's look at Part B. If all people obey the law, then prisons are not needed. So remember, we are going to flip these two statements and negate them. So I'm going to start off with prisons are needed because it's already negative. So if prisons are needed, then, and it's an all statement. So remember, with the all statement, we have the latter. We have no, some, or all. And if we're going from all to negate it, we need to go to some. So I'm going to say, if prisons are needed, then some people don't obey the law. Okay, and then our last one, really all we're doing is we're flip-flopping these two statements and negating both. So here we have this. We have not, if not are, then P and Q. So I want to have you guys have a chance to try it on your own. I want you to pause the video and then try these. So the first one, if you can read this, then you're driving too closely. So if we flip those, we have, if you're not driving too closely, then you can't read this. B, if you don't have clean underwear, it's time to do laundry. So the next one would be, if we do the contrapositive of that, is it is not time to do laundry if you have clean underwear. So C, if all students are honest, then supervision during exams are not required. Now notice it's one of those qualitative statements, so we're going to have to go from all to some. If supervision during exams is required, then some students are not honest. And the last one, which I think is one of the easiest ones because they're already in symbolic form, is just flipping the two statements, Q, then P or R. So now let's talk about some variations of the conditional statement. We just talked about conditional earlier. That's if P then Q. That's the one that you're most familiar with. And now we've talked about contrapositive already. Notice that it's not Q, then not P. We have not talked about converse and inverse. We've already said that these two are equivalent. The converse is literally just changing the antecedent and the consequent, but we're keeping them positive. So in this one, it would be if Q, then P, instead of the other way around. Inverse is negating the converse, so it'll be not P, then not Q. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is that I made a table down below with the outcomes of each of these. Notice that P, then Q is a true, false, true, true. And then over here, I have the contrapositive, and that is also a true, false, true, true. And I had already told you that they're equivalent. Notice that this is the converse, and this is the inverse. Look at their outcomes. We have true, true, false, false, true, true, false, true, 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 false, true. These two are also equivalent. So you really need to know that those two are equivalent. So I want to look at one example where we're actually writing the variations. If you bring drugs to school, then you will be caught by our security guards. I've taken the time to write down all the variations on the side, and I want you to take a minute to look at what the outcome would be if I write conditional. Remember, conditional, it should be the original statement. So it would be, if you bring drugs to school, then you'll be caught by security guards. What would the contrapositive be? Take a minute to write that down. And then go ahead and try to do the converse and the inverse, and then check your work. Okay, so let's see. We already talked about the first one, so let's do the converse. That's just changing the two statements. If you get caught by a security guard, then you bring drugs to school. So that is the converse. The inverse is if you do not bring drugs to school, then you do not get caught by our security guards. And the contrapositive, if you do not get caught by our security guards, then you did not bring drugs to school. So let's review for a second. Writing the contrapositive for a conditional statement is just taking the original P, then Q, switching the antecedent and the consequent, and negating them both. The converse and the inverse. The converse is just switching the antecedent and the consequent. And the inverse is taking the original and negating the original. That's it for this video.